galaxy types last time, so that's where we'll begin this time. So the first major type of galaxy that's out there in the universe is called a spiral galaxy. And these are things that are just like the Milky Way in their structural components, the four we talked about. And the only difference is this is not what the Milky Way is. It's close. It has arms, disk, bulge, all that stuff. But it's not what the Milky Way strictly is. And we'll get to what it is in just a second. Okay, so let me kind of show you just a couple of pictures of what a spiral galaxy, a typical one, looks like. And I'll make maybe a couple of comments, and then we'll go to the second major type. Okay, so here's a few. And probably the one in the middle, B and C, are the easiest to see as far as the arms. There's a spiral arm going like that, right into the middle, and then another one coming out and wrapping around the bottom of it like that. And then C is another easy one. It goes right there, right into the middle, and then it comes out of the middle and wraps around sort of like that. So in a spiral galaxy, the arms always come straight out of the middle where the bulge is and just curl around the rest of the bulge. Like in the two that are right there. They're the easiest ones to see. So that's what your typical spiral galaxy looks like. Just the bulge, the arms, and all that. All right, this is not what the Milky Way is, though, like I said, because the Milky Way has all of the stuff a spiral galaxy does, but one extra thing. And there are enough galaxies that have the one extra thing that we make them a separate type. And those are called barred spiral galaxies. So these are spiral galaxies in every way, but they have a so-called bar of stars running through the center, and you'll see what I mean when I show you a picture. Okay, this is what the Milky Way is. So if I ever ask you what is the Milky Way galaxy as far as which of the four major types, it's a barred spiral galaxy. So it's close to a spiral galaxy, but it has that one extra thing, that bar of stars. So let me show you what that looks like. So basically what you do here is you imagine a rectangle running through the middle of the galaxy. So there's the bulge right there in the middle. And then you have this rectangle. Just kind of imagine a rectangle going right through the middle. And then you've got the spiral arms again. There's one coming up on top, and then there's one that curls down to the bottom. But in this case, the arms don't curve into the center like they do in a spiral galaxy. They actually end at each end of the bar and then work their way out from there. So that's the big difference between these and spiral galaxies, is this bar, and then the arms don't go into the middle. They start at each end of the bar and go outwards from there. So that's your second major type, and this, like I said, is exactly what the Milky Way is. Okay, third major type of galaxy out there. Oh, here, first of all, here's the Milky Way. There's the bar in the Milky Way. If this was ours, which we, like I said before, we think we're pretty close to this, just imagine the straight line running right through the middle. That's the bar, and then our galaxy would look pretty similar to this one, we think.
I'm sorry, could you go back to the definition of the barred galaxy for a minute?
Yeah, the barred spot, sure. Yeah. There you go. And you can do like she just did, open up your mic, or you can type anything you want to know about in the chat, just like always. Everything's working perfectly fine again. Good. Okay. So there's our Milky Way-ish, what we think it probably looks like. All right, so there's a nice barred spiral galaxy right there with the nice rectangle and then the arms coming out, the one I showed you before. Okay, two things about this to point out. All spiral and barred spiral galaxies have this dark stuff running through it. You can see this actually cuts across the center of the galaxy, and there's some of it running along the spiral arms here. Anybody know what that stuff is? We've already talked about it once. You can put it in chat or just tell me however you want to do it. All that dark stuff. Yeah, dust. This is all dust. And every spiral and barred spiral has it. In fact, even this real galaxy here has one right there. You can just see it's running through there. Okay. Our Milky Way really does. Oh, I cut it off. Okay. Our Milky Way has it too. If you look at the Milky Way in the sky, you'll see that it looks kind of patchy. You got the haze of stars, but then it's broken up by all this dark stuff all over the place. Okay, that stuff is dust, and it's important because what that tells us is all spiral and barred spiral galaxies have dust, which means they easily have the stuff that you need to give birth to new stars. So there's star birth going on in all spiral and barred spiral galaxies because they have the stuff you need, including our Milky Way. Okay, so if you take that away and take away the fact that the Milky Way looks patchy, it's because you're looking at the dust in it. Okay, that's the first thing to take away. Second thing is, if you look at that picture of that galaxy, all spiral and barred spiral galaxies rotate around their centers. Okay, they just rotate on their axis like a planet would do or a star would do. So if you look at that galaxy, just take a wild shot at it. Which direction do you think that thing rotates? Clockwise or counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
Yeah, that guy goes clockwise. What gives that away? What would make you say that?
The directions of the arms?
Yeah, the curve in the arms that it has there. So it's just like, if you were to spin that thing around, you could easily imagine, in water, you can imagine what it would do. And so, turns out 95% of galaxies, you can easily tell which spiral galaxies, like these guys, you can tell which way they rotate by the curve of the arms. 5% of the time, for reasons we don't understand, though, you'd be wrong. They go the other way. And we have no idea why a galaxy like this one, with arms that curve like that, would spin counterclockwise, because that's not what you would expect. Okay. But most of the time, you'd be right. There are people trying to figure that out, why some go the other way, but nobody has a good idea yet, has explained it. Okay, so that's barred and spirals and spirals. Okay, the third major type of galaxy are called elliptical galaxies. And they're named that just based on their shape. They're elliptical. So we just call them what they look like, really. All right, these are totally different from any of the two spiral galaxies, or barred spirals. Totally different from those two. They don't have arms, a disk, a bulge. They have none of that. They have no dust, which is what interstellar matter means, by the way. There's no dust in these things at all. There's gas, but there's no dust. And what that means is elliptical galaxies really don't give birth to stars anymore because they don't have the stuff that it takes. So these are different in every way from your regular old spiral and barred spiral galaxy. Okay, so I'll pop back to this real quick in just a second, but here's what elliptical galaxies look like. They're elliptical in shape, so that's why we call them that. And you can see there's no dark stuff in here. There's no junk running through them. There's no dust at all. Okay, so that's your typical elliptical galaxy. Okay, now, elliptical galaxies run the largest range of size of any type of galaxy. So if I were to ever ask, out of the four major types of galaxies, what are the smallest ones in the universe? An elliptical galaxy would be your best choice, because they can be really tiny. But if I asked, what are the largest galaxies in size out of the four, it would be elliptical galaxies also. They can be really, really huge. So let me go back to those pictures again. You really don't have anything to compare to here, but these two elliptical galaxies on the left are actually pretty small. They're way, way smaller than our Milky Way galaxy. But this big one here, the biggest picture, that's the biggest galaxy that we know of in the universe. It may not really be, but it's the biggest one we know of. And just to give you an idea of how big that thing is, this little guy right here, what looks like small, would actually be our Milky Way. And if you remember how big the Milky Way is, anybody remember how big our galaxy is in light years, diameter?
100,000.
Yeah, 100,000 light years. That little guy right there is 100,000 light years. So you can just imagine how big this guy is. This has also the biggest black hole at the center that we know of. It's the one I showed you the picture of when we were talking about black holes. And this guy is so huge that these little spots fuzzy spots you can see surrounding it, those aren't stars. Those are actually globular clusters that belong to this galaxy. So it's just incredible to see that much detail from a galaxy 70 million light years away, which this one is about 70 million light years away. It's just incredible how big this thing really is. Okay? So elliptical galaxies are among the smallest galaxies, but they're also among the biggest. Okay. If you're having lag and your computer keeps cutting out, there's one of two possibilities for that. Either it's your bandwidth isn't strong enough, or it turns out that you may have to actually reboot your computer and come back in. I found out that was what happened last time, and why I had to call class. That happened to me. I just couldn't even get in. I see a couple of things in the chat about that. So those are your two possibilities for a solution. Okay, let's move to the fourth major type. And they're called irregular galaxies. Irregular galaxies are called that, again, based on their shape. They don't have a well-defined shape. They're just kind of irregular, so we call them what they look like. And then I've got one of the ways that these things can form listed there. When galaxies collide, which that happens fairly frequently. When galaxies run into each other, their shapes will get messed up. So if you have two perfectly happy spiral galaxies collide with each other, they're going to become irregular galaxies, no doubt about it. The other way you can get an irregular galaxy is it just forms that way, just like an elliptical would or a spiral would. And so those are the two possible ways you can get these guys here. Okay, irregular galaxies have dust in them. They have stuff so they can make stars. So the only type of galaxy out of the four that can't make any more stars are elliptical galaxies because they just don't have dust. But irregulars and the two spirals, they do, and they can do it. So here's a couple of irregular galaxies. You know, your eye may trick you into thinking there's a shape there, but there's really nothing there that you could put your finger on. Okay, the most famous irregular galaxy is, I guess I took it out of there, it's called the Large Magellanic Cloud, and it's kind of a bigger version of this one here on the bottom. And if you're ever in the southern hemisphere or you've been there on a nice clear night where it's dark, and you think you see a faint cloud in the sky, you're actually looking at the big version of this one. This one's called the Small Magellanic Cloud, this one on top. The large one looks like this one on the bottom, only bigger. Okay? And you can easily see them in the southern hemisphere sky. Okay, so spiral, barred spiral, elliptical, and irregular. Those are your four major galaxy types out there. Okay, so you can just type the letter into chat or say it or whatever, but everybody should get this one. And I'm harping on it one last time for a good reason. So what would be the property of a galaxy that I would look for to try to find the distance to it? What do you think out of those four possibilities? And those are actually properties of stars, I realize, but when you're looking at a star, when you're looking at galaxies, you're looking at stars anyway. Yeah, so everybody's saying A, the luminosity, and that's right. So that's basically the standard candle idea. The reason I'm coming back to this one final time to harp on it is because we're going to come across a second standard candle that we use to find distances to galaxies. One of them was that white dwarf supernova thing, but there's another one we're going to get to fairly soon that you also can use. Okay, so it is the luminosity. All right, let's move on to this guy. So we're going to be here for probably at least 5 or 10 minutes. First thing to take away about this diagram, you can either snap a picture of it, you can Google it. It's called Hubble's tuning fork diagram. But you don't have to sketch it out. You can either take a picture of it with your phone or Google it, whatever. Okay, the first thing to take away is it is called Hubble's tuning fork diagram because it looks like a tuning fork in music that you would use. Okay. All 4 major galaxy types are in there. And what makes this thing important is this is how we classify galaxies using this mumbo-jumbo